potential release has intensified public concern. Timothy Danson, representing the victims' families, is battling to keep Bernardo imprisoned. He argues that the public has the right to access detailed records of Bernardo's parole hearings, including psychiatric assessments. The Supreme Court of Canada's decision on whether to grant this access could significantly impact the fight against Bernardo's release. In May 2023, Bernardo's transfer from a maximum security to a medium security prison fueled fears of imminent release. His detached comments about his crimes and the high risk of re-offending underscore the concerns about his potential reintegration into society. The public and victims' families remain resolute in their opposition to his release. As the debate over Paul Bernardo's potential release continues to ignite fear and outrage, another high-profile criminal case has reached a critical juncture, drawing attention to the complexities of justice and parole. The controversial release of Oscar Pistorius. Oscar Pistorius. On January 5, 2024, Oscar Pistorius, the former Paralympic sprinter known as the Blade Runner, was released on parole from Atteridgeville Correctional Centre in Pretoria. This release comes nearly 11 years after he was convicted for the 2013 shooting death of his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. Pistorius initially claimed he mistook Steenkamp for an intruder, but he was ultimately found guilty of murder after an appeal. He was sentenced to 15 years, but served 8.5 years before being granted parole. Pistorius, who was born with a congenital leg condition and had both legs amputated as a baby, achieved remarkable success as a sprinter, competing in both the Paralympic and Olympic Games. Despite his athletic achievements, including multiple gold medals and world records, his career was marred by controversy, including accusations of gaining an unfair advantage from his prosthetic limbs. Reeva Steenkamp's family opposes Pistorius's release, questioning his remorse and rehabilitation. Pistorius's parole conditions include living at his uncle's mansion, strict restrictions on his movements, abstaining from alcohol, and facing unannounced visits. While Oscar Pistorius's release has stirred significant controversy and debate over justice and rehabilitation, another case recently emerged that has similarly provoked outrage and concern about the fairness of parole decisions. Kenneth McKay, convicted of a heinous crime in Saskatoon, is now facing scrutiny over his recent parole.
Okay, the networks are down, the equipment is ready, and we've crippled their supplies. Mrs. Rackman has written our check and given us the green light. We're good to finally move on that submarine and stop this threat once and for all. When you're ready, get your crew together and head back to planning.
At a bar and accepted a ride home, unaware of the impending danger. Instead of taking her home, McKay drove her to a remote area where he fatally crushed her with his truck. He then dragged her body with a metal chain for nearly 3 kilometers before hiding her remains under snow. During the investigation, McKay showed disturbing behavior, including urinating near where Crystal's body was found. In June 2002, McKay was sentenced to life imprisonment for first-degree murder, with no parole for 25 years. Despite his claims of rehabilitation and an attempt to identify as Métis, McKay's recent parole hearing revealed he admitted to a sexual component of the crime. In January 2023, McKay was granted day parole and now resides in a Vancouver Island facility under strict conditions. This decision has shocked and angered Crystal's family and community, who continue to fear for their safety and question McKay's release. While Kenneth McKay's parole decision has deeply unsettled those affected by his crime, the controversial release of another convicted murderer, Jeremy Wade Vojkovic, further exemplifies the ongoing challenges and concerns surrounding parole decisions for violent offenders. Jeremy Wade Vojkovic. In November 2002, 15-year-old Jeremy Wade Vojkovic brutally murdered Colleen Findlay, a beloved mother from Maple Ridge. He broke into her home, assaulted her, and killed her before setting the house on fire to hide his crime. Colleen died from smoke inhalation. Vojkovic showed no remorse, casually spending the day driving her car and partying. During Vojkovic's trial, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Despite this, in June 2022, he was controversially granted day parole after showing no violence for a decade and completing rehabilitation programs. However, his release quickly raised concerns when he violated parole conditions and engaged in suspicious activities, including drug use and dishonesty about his behavior. In January 2023, following a victim impact statement from Colleen's family and a psychological risk assessment, Vojkovic's day parole was revoked due to his repeated breaches and dishonesty. While the revocation provided some relief, Colleen's family continues to suffer from the profound loss and trauma of her murder. While Jeremy Wade Vojkovic's brutal crime and subsequent parole issues highlight the complexities of criminal justice and rehabilitation, the case of Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubillos offers a chilling perspective on the extreme violence and psychological torment inflicted by serial predators. Luis Garavito. Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubillos, born in 1957 in Colombia, endured a traumatic childhood marked by neglect, abuse, and bullying. These experiences fueled his later criminal behavior. As a teenager, Garavito's life was fraught with family conflicts, mental health issues, and a disturbing obsession with child molestation. Despite attempts to seek help through Alcoholics Anonymous and religious conversion, his compulsions persisted. In adulthood, Garavito worked various jobs, but faced frequent conflicts. His criminal activities escalated as he began preying on street children, assaulting them during his lunch breaks, and torturing them with razor blades and other tools. From 1992 to 1999, Garavito's reign of terror involved luring boys with promises of work or gifts, then subjecting them to horrific abuse, torture, and murder. Authorities estimate he may have killed nearly 300 victims. Garavito was finally apprehended in 1999 after attempting to rape a 12-year-old boy. DNA evidence linked him to numerous murders, leading to a conviction for 172 murders and a historic sentence of 1,853 years, later reduced to 40 years due to legal changes. Garavito's death in prison in October 2023 ended his reign of terror, but his actions left enduring scars and prompted legal reforms. Garavito's horrifying crimes and the subsequent investigation into his actions highlight the extreme depths of human depravity. In a similarly disturbing case, the story of Richard Marquette reveals another facet of criminal violence, underscoring the chilling reality of such crimes across different contexts and time periods. Richard Marquette. On June 8, 1961, Portland police are alerted by a housewife whose dog brings home a human foot. Further investigation reveals more body parts, all drained of blood. The foot belongs to Joan Caudle, a 23-year-old housewife who had been reported missing while shopping. Her husband denies involvement, but mentions her recent depression. A witness recalls seeing Joan with a man named Marquette at a bar. Police discover Marquette's residence with body parts and blood-stained lingerie. Marquette, arrested after being added to the FBI's most wanted list, confesses to killing Joan during an argument. He leads authorities to her head, and he is sentenced to life in prison. In 1975, mutilated remains of Betty Wilson are found, and Marquette becomes the prime suspect. Evidence links him to her murder and another from 1974. Marquette admits to both crimes and is sentenced to life without parole. He remains incarcerated at Oregon State Penitentiary with no chance of release. As Richard Marquette's horrifying crimes unfolded, leaving a trail of devastation and a life sentence behind bars, another figure emerged in the annals of criminal infamy, David Berkowitz. Born into a troubled life and driven by a twisted sense of destiny, Berkowitz's reign of terror in New York City would cast a long shadow over the city's collective psyche, leading to his own notorious legacy. David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, born Richard David Falco on June 1, 1953 in Brooklyn, faced a troubled start. Adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz, he experienced emotional turmoil and behavioral issues despite their love. His early years involved petty crimes and vandalism, compounded by the death of his adoptive mother, which strained his relationship with his father. After serving in the army, Berkowitz's sense of alienation deepened upon learning about his adoption. In December 1975, Berkowitz began a violent spree in New York City, escalating to his infamous .44 caliber killer attacks. Between July 29, 1976 and March 1977, he murdered 6 people and injured 7, targeting young women and couples in parked cars. He taunted the police with letters claiming demonic influence. Berkowitz was arrested in August 1977 after a tip led police to his Yonkers apartment. He confessed, attributing his actions to a demon-possessed dog. Sentenced to 25 to life for each murder, Berkowitz remains incarcerated. Now 70, his eligibility for parole has sparked public fear. His crimes had a profound psychological impact, leading to laws preventing criminals from profiting from their notoriety, and his legacy continues to haunt New York City. David Berkowitz's heinous acts in New York City during the 1970s exemplified a chilling descent into violence, fueled by personal demons. As the fear of his crimes gripped the city, another disturbing figure, William Lester Suff, emerged with a different, yet equally horrifying trajectory of violence. William Lester Suff. William Lester Suff, known as the Riverside Prostitute Killer, is notorious for his reign of terror across Texas and California. Born on August 20th, 1950, Suff's criminal history began with a conviction in 1974 for beating his 2-month-old daughter to death, leading to a 70-year sentence. Surprisingly, he was released on parole after just 10 years. Instead of reform, this release spurred Suff's violent tendencies, culminating in a gruesome killing spree between 1989 and 1991. Convicted of 12 murders and 1 attempted murder, his victims were mostly women, including sex workers, and his crimes were marked by extreme brutality. Suff's killing spree ended in 1992 when he was arrested with incriminating evidence found in his vehicle. He was sentenced to death in 1995 and remained on death row at San Quentin State Prison. In August 2024, he confessed to the 1986 murder of Kathy Ann Small, which had been unsolved until modern forensic science linked him to the crime. Despite this and other suspected murders, Suff's possible release within days has caused public outrage and concern, prompting questions about justice and community safety. While William Lester Suff's reign of terror shocked the nation with its brutal violence and seemingly unending cycle of brutality, another equally disturbing figure emerged from the shadows of crime: Mark Allen Smith. Smith's own story of violence and instability, spanning both his early life and military career, paints a grim picture of a killer whose violent tendencies persisted despite numerous opportunities for intervention and reform. Mark Allen Smith. Mark Allen Smith, born June 27, 1949, in Chicago, Illinois, is infamously known as the state's forgotten serial killer. His early life was marked by violence and instability, stemming from his parents' separation and his mother's troubled remarriage. Smith's violent tendencies emerged in childhood, with incidents including an attempted strangulation and a brutal stabbing of a playmate. Enlisting in the army during the Vietnam War, Smith was court-martialed for assault, but later confessed to murdering 8 women in West Germany, though he was never prosecuted. His known criminal spree began in December 1969 with the abduction, rape, and murder of Obie Faye Ash. This was followed by the murder of John Bianchi in January 1970 and Janice Bolliard in February 1970, with Smith showing increasing brutality. His final known victim was John Ann Lingenfelter, whom he raped and murdered in May 1970. Captured and sentenced to 500 years in prison in 1971, Smith has since attempted to escape and authored a book. Despite his claims of reform, he faces periodic parole hearings, with victims' families opposing his release. The ongoing debate questions whether Smith can truly be rehabilitated or remains a threat to society. While Mark Allen Smith's reign of terror was marked by his violent spree across West Germany, Warren Harris Jr. emerged as a notorious figure in the French Quarter, where his brutal crimes against the LGBTQ+ community left a lasting impact. Warren Harris Jr. Warren Harris Jr., born in 1961 in New Orleans, was raised by his mother and maternal grandfather, a Baptist minister. His early life appeared normal, but he began committing small crimes and was jailed for auto theft in 1974. Dropping out of school, he moved in with a transsexual roommate in the French Quarter, where he would later commit his crimes. Between February and April 1977, Harris terrorized the French Quarter, stabbing 5 men to death. The victims were middle-aged gay men who frequented local gay establishments. The brutal killings caused widespread fear. Harris was arrested on April 13, 1977, after attempting to rob and stab a seaman. During interrogation, he confessed to 4 murders, but was not linked to one victim. He was convicted of the murders of Robert Gary, Jack Saville, Alden D. Delano, and Ernest Pommier, receiving 3 consecutive life sentences. Harris served his time at Angola prison, and despite the severity of his crimes, became eligible for parole in 2021, due to his young age at the time. On April 17, 2024, he was granted parole, sparking fear and controversy about his potential return to society. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
What the f do you mean? They cannot resuscitate him. That's what the f mean.
There are plenty of twisted and sinister people hiding in plain sight. You might not even know it when a killer walks right by you in broad daylight. But in these cases, their dark intentions are made crystal clear because it's all captured on film for the world to see. And what do these disturbing killers have to show you? Well, it might make you sick to your stomach. cooperate so openly in police investigations, but this particular killer is more than willing to reenact his crime for the officers. In a chilling video clip, he meticulously recreates his brutal act in front of the detectives, down to the exact motion he used to stab his victim. Realizing that he did this to an actual person, not a test dummy, makes watching the footage deeply unsettling. His calm voice and composed demeanor almost feel as if he's providing a tutorial of his actions. This is a true blink and you'll miss it incident. On January 4th, 2019, a In a span of only 25 seconds, Lee Pomeroy was stabbed 18 times by Darren Pensil after a disagreement rapidly escalated far beyond mere physical confrontation. Khalid Farah was shot at close range with a shotgun while sitting in a rental car on November 11th, 2017. The incident took place in Southall, West London, where two men arrived armed, shot Khalid twice, and then quickly fled the